Hello, parents. Welcome back. I'm so excited to see you here today, where we're going to embark on another layer of what it means to parent consciously. I'm sure a lot of stuff is brewing within you, a lot is conjuring inside you, especially this idea that a lot of our love for our kids is actually stemming from our own internal lack, more than any sort of undying devotion we may have for them. You know, this idea that parenting is not about the child really began to hone in for me after the hundreds of workshops I began to give parents. At these workshops, I would always ask parents, very casually, why did you become a parent? And I'm asking you here too, why did you become a parent? Take a moment to write your answers and let's notice what you came up with. I don't know about you, but before I became a parent, oh my goodness, I was filled with these grandiose visions of what it would be like. For example, my 2-year-old and I, we would sit in the sun-dappled room side by side and we would paint these perfectly synchronous paintings, these masterpieces. And then, right after we've painted for hours, we would go sit in the garden amid the vegetables that we've grown ourselves, mind you. And then we would do yoga in tandem on the grass. And then when she got to be a little older, maybe like a teen, of course I would get upset with her because, every parent gets upset with their teens, but not because she was out partying with her friends, but because she, my teenager, she would be out volunteering at the soup kitchen. That's why I'd be mad at her. These were my grand fantasies about my Zen parenting, my Zen baby, my Zen teen. Guess how many of these fantasies came true? You got it. 0, nada, none. I remember feeling utterly shocked. I was devastated. I felt almost betrayed. Like, how dare my child not follow my script? How dare she have her own ideas about her own self and her own childhood? How audacious. What disrespect. I can still remember this feeling of feeling just completely crushed, even depressed, feeling as if surely there was something wrong with her. There was a small part that was asking, was there something wrong with me? And it was only after deep introspection that I was ready to admit that my child really didn't do anything wrong by following her own sense of self. All these fantasies I was conjuring and thinking of and making all these movies in my head, they were all coming from my own sense of lack and incompleteness. Once I realized this, I was even more depressed. Was I really that self-absorbed that I literally had created this movie of how my child would be, how her childhood would turn out? And like a tyrant dictator, I was mad when she didn't follow my lead? Was I really this insane? Were there other parents like me? As a way to discover if there were, I began to ask. I began to ask parents everywhere, why did you become a parent? And sure enough, their answers were in the range of like this. I became a parent because I loved my mother and I wanted to be a mother myself. Or, I became a parent because I had a crappy childhood, so I wanted to experience what a good childhood would be like. Or, I have so much love to give, so I wanted to give it to my child. I wanted to give all this feeling inside me to someone else. I don't know about you, but I began to hear a common theme through these answers. Can you? I certainly identified that the one clear thing that is in every reason was the I. I this, I that. So I began to deconstruct that almost every reason we have for wanting a child doesn't come from the child per se. How could it? The child isn't even here. It comes from our own inner desires, our own inner needs, and our own unrelenting ego. This wasn't about the child. This was about us, the parent, our vision for ourselves. And yet we were all lying to ourselves that we were doing this sacrificing thing for our children, as if we were saving them from this hellish existence, rescuing them from purgatory. I began to wonder, why is it that we parents can't admit that we have children for ourselves, to fulfill our deep longing? That parenting begins and ends and continues with our own heavy, ego-filled agenda. You know why? Because we have bought into and created this idea that the parent is some sort of mythological being. And this is why we can't admit our own egoic agendas, because we're not supposed to have any egoic agendas. This is the story we've bought into. So what do? We secretly have the agenda, sneak it in there, but we pretend we have none. This story that a parent is this self-sacrificing, saintly heroine or hero serves a purpose, you see. It gives us the right to then dictate our children's lives and dominate over them. Do you see how this connects? Now that we've done so much for them, guess what? They owe us their allegiance, their obedience, and even their blind servitude. In fact, the more servile they are, the happier we are. And so then when they aren't so servile, well, according to the 100 parenting books out there, and even a few religious ones, what does the parent have the right to do? To punish, even beat, lock the kid up in closets and basements, shame them, or do really anything that the holy grail of parenting, discipline, says you want to do. The notion of disciplining your kids really allows the parent then to do literally anything, carte blanche, to the child if the child fails to be obedient. Now imagine if we owned that we had children to fulfill our own agendas. What would that really mean? Well, at the outset, it would mean that we cannot pretend that we are doing things for our children's sake and only their sake anymore. We would need to own in front of our children, this is for me, and this is for me, and this is really for me. Please, can you play the piano for me? Now we aren't so sanctimonious, are we? Now we would need to see our inner control monster in the eye, wouldn't we? And the whole story we have believed and bought into, that our control and dominance over our children is really for their own good, now it all blows up in our face. So now what? How will we exert our power over our children? You see, the current parenting paradigm as it is run today gives parents this intense reign of control over their kids. And control is really now an archaic, old way of living and parenting. It is externally driven. It is about changing the other. And we now know in spiritually conscious communities that this doesn't ever work. So it is time for this control-based paradigm to shift. And it all begins by us acknowledging our ego, our egoic desires, our control-based agendas over our children. We need to stop pretending that we are something other than who it is we are. We parents now need to own our insatiable thirst for influence, power, and control. It is only when we own our own inner egos that we begin to come out of the shadows of our lies and begin an honest and transparent transformation. From one simple question, why did you become a parent? I was able to slowly deconstruct that parenting is heavily focused on the parent's inner agenda and barely on the child. From this one place, I was quickly able to unravel that this entire parenting mythology we've created, that parenting is about the child, is untrue. So when I show parents the conscious truth that no, the way they are parenting is not really about the child before them at all, and it is really mired in their own self-centered interests, then a shift starts to take place within the parent. Instead of being fixated on the child before them, the parent is now open, at least slightly open, maybe you are too, to asking, can I look at my own agenda here? Can I not fixate over something that my child is doing or not, but instead shift slightly and begin to take the mirror inward to my own inner terrain? This inner awareness, this shift of focus from the child, parenting is about the child when we know it isn't, to the real truth that parenting could be coming from our own inner wounds and our own inner baggage, this first step is the first path toward creating accountability in the parent. It challenges them to look at their own hidden agendas and their own unspoken expectations. So the first step, we have to admit that our parenting has been heavily self-fulfilling. Tough pill to swallow. But once we have this awareness, then everything begins to move and shift within ourselves and with our children. You know, our egoic agendas, we keep them hidden. Because no one wants to talk about the truth of them, we keep them hidden in the shadows of our parenting. It is now time to take them out of the dark and into the light of our conscious awareness. This is what the journey of awakening is all about. Coming out of darkness, out of our slumber, to shining our light on our shadows of our unresolved stuff. Even if it is hard to see all that is cobwebbed and denied and suppressed, all these past patterns from our past generations, it is now time to shine the light on the truth of our egoic agendas. You know, I know, any parent wants to do this. It's tough to do this. It's hard to accept that a lot of how you were parenting really came from your agendas. Who wants to admit this? We think we love our children, and then to discover that this love is so primed on our own egos, wow, that's really hard to swallow. But in order to awaken, in order to change our relationship with our children, in order to create connection where we see them for who it is they are, we need to release our own agendas from the picture. When we are accountable to the truth of our own unfulfilled expectations, when we see that it's really our own unconsciousness that's running the ship, this accountability, let me tell you, is a huge act of courage and consciousness. It is a sign that you are now ready to evolve, to grow up, where instead of displacing responsibility on your child and pretending that all your problems with your child are your child's fault, now it shows that you are ready to look in the mirror of your own evolution and begin the path of transformation for yourself. So today is a significant day where you begin to come to terms with the fact that a lot of your parenting was colored by your own self. Now, it may seem like an admission of weakness to you. To me, it's an admission of courage. It may seem as if you need to feel guilty and you need to go back and reverse everything you've done because till now you've been parenting out of your own agenda. That's not what we do. We start with this moment. We realize all that we've done came about because of our level of unconsciousness. And with compassion, we begin today again with this awareness that we're going to watch for our ego-filled agendas. We're going to become aware of the things that come out of our mouth, of our energy, of our behaviors towards our children, and watch for that ego that has been hiding in the shadows. So for today's task, we're going to really uncover our ego-filled agendas. Now, in order to do so, we need to begin the process of reflection. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions for you to reflect on to help you uncover and unearth the underlying ego in your parenting. So the first question I want you to ask yourselves is, what was your vision for becoming a parent? The second one, what fantasies did you have about how you would be as a parent, how you would parent, how you would show up? And the third one, what kind of child did you fantasize having? What was this idea of your perfect child? It's really important for you to become clear about these 3 questions because then you will begin to see, it'll be revealed to you, your selfish reason for having a child. And as we own to our own selfish purpose or passion for having a child or becoming a parent, then you begin to understand, that was my ego. See, even before I had a child, I had this ego. That was my need. See, even before I had a child, I was already using my child. I was planning to use my child to fulfill that need. So this exercise is really important to go beneath the behaviors to that shadow that lives inside all us parents to uncover our ego-filled agendas. And don't forget, share your selfish reason with the tribe, and let's come to terms that most of us have children for our own selfish purposes.